Hello, people of the Earth. Welcome to the Front Page Fables. Today we are going through some amazing stories, but before, blissfully unaware of the new friend I went camping with. Thinking about the time this random hippie I met, and I hitchhiked from Boulder to Nederland and didn't get there till like 1 a.m., so we just rolled out our sleeping bags behind this little gas station and woke up to this dude sitting maybe like 15 feet away just looking at us. Big, tall Native American dude. I'm barely awake and moving, and he comes over and just says, "I didn't want to wake you up." I was like, "Yeah, good call, dude. Why TF were you just sitting there?" Him. "I was waiting for you to wake up." Me. "Why?" Him. "Do you have any glass?" Me. "Dude, I just left Denver to get away from all the F-King tweakers. I don't have any of that shit." Him. "Tweakers? No. Do you have glass to smoke out of?" Then he proceeds to pull a giant mason jar of weed out of his backpack. Him. "Your woman looks a hippie. I thought you smoked." Dude I hitched there with, still in his sleeping bag, I'm a fucking dude. After a few minutes of unpleasant pleasantries and getting our bags packed up, dude tells us his name is Lobo, and if we wanted to smoke, he knows a good spot overlooking the quarry. So we start walking. He took us into the timber to this spot where the roots between 3 trees had grown together, making a perfectly symmetrical bench in the hillside about 2 feet off the ground. The view was absolutely gorgeous. So we proceed to sit and get stoned, and Lobo starts telling us a story about a clairvoyant magic man who he referred to as a wizard. According to the story, the wizard wasn't a native and didn't belong to either of the 2 predominant tribes who lived there, which allowed him to intermingle between the tribes and act as a middleman for trade deals, as well as keep peace between the 2 tribes. The wizard was more or less a nomad. He lived in the woods, never staying in one place. He didn't keep a shelter, but slept in caves and continually moved all around the surrounding mountains, blessing the land and offering gratitude, ensuring it would continue to prosper and provide for all its inhabitants. Animals, trees, plant life, and humans. The wizard would wade out into the water that would eventually become the quarry we were looking out on, measuring the depth of the water with his staff and prophesied over the land according to where the water came up to certain markings on his staff. The story was vague and didn't really connect from one part to the next, but it was a badass story nonetheless. Long story short, the 3 of us got on pretty well, so we invited Lobo to hike up to the mountain with us and spend a few days camping. It was still cold out and snowy, and none of us had tents, so we built a fire and gathered these big rocks to heat up in the fire during the day and buried them at night to heat the ground and slept on top of them. I was surprised at how comfortable I was. So after a few days, we needed to hike into town for water and food supplies and booze, so off we went. Just as we were getting into town, a cop cruises past us and stops a little ways up the road and gets out of his car, with a visibly concerned, bordering fearful demeanor. It was obvious that he was approaching the situation extremely cautiously. He stayed by his car rather than approaching us, so there's a good 20+ feet of space between us, and it was immediately clear the Lobo and the cop were familiar with each other. Cop. Lobo, who let you out? Lobo, full-on 1,000-yard stare directly past the cop. Says nothing. Cop. Lobo, did somebody let you out? Lobo. It's fine. I am okay to be out. I am okay. Almost as if he was honestly trying to put the cop at ease. So, finally the cop walks over. The interaction felt way more like small talk than an integration. It couldn't have been more obvious this cop was trying to play it cool. He asks Lobo how long he'd been out. Lobo says a few days and assures the officer that he's fine to be out. After a few minutes, backup arrives with an even more uneasy demeanor. The 2 cops go and talk quietly amongst themselves, at which point Lobo hands us his backpack and says he'll meet us back up on the mountain that night. The cops come and in the most beat around the bush way, basically ask Lobo if it would maybe be okay if he rode down to the station with them to make sure everything was on the up and up. Lobo was reluctantly cooperative and got in the squad car. The cops come back to Dude and I and asks if we're okay. We said yes, confused as to why they would ask. They exchange a look, visibly relieved. These cops were straight shook, like literal sweat on the brow shook. With as few details as possible, they tell us that Lobo is a lifelong resident of an institution for the criminally insane with a history of violence and being a flight risk. Apparently, he'd escaped in a bunch of different ways, some of which they still hadn't figured out how. Basically, the cops are baffled and astonished that we spent that much time with him without incident. They didn't run our names and just let us on our way. They were both looking at each other, absolutely dumbfounded, all raised eyebrows and shaking their heads like they dodged some serious shit. In the end, we hike back up and wait around for a week for Lobo to come back. He never did. After a week passed, we decided to tap into Lobo's herb. My hippie dude shakes his head and pops the top off the jar and holds it out in front of him. Hippie. Thanks, Lobo, wherever you are. And that's the story of the chillest, criminally insane person I've ever met. On to our next one. He finally texted me. After months. My ex-situationship ended things with me around 9 months back. I really loved him and I felt like he did too. We were long distance and never talked about getting into a relationship while being long distance, but we did get to the point of saying I love you to each other. Our situationship lasted around 4 or 5 months before he ended it. We stopped talking but still wished each other on our birthdays and randomly texted just to catch up on stuff. However, after 3 months he texted me saying that he misses me. I missed him too. A lot. As a matter of fact, when he ended stuff with me, I told him I'd always love him, and it's kinda obvious to him that I still have a thing for him. So after he texted me, we started talking for 2 days and randomly out of nowhere he stops texting me. I didn't want to text him first because then it would feel like I'm putting more efforts. Around 2 weeks later, he texted me asking me how I was and what I did on Valentine's. I told him I didn't really do anything, and he told me he didn't too. Then suddenly, he texts me and tells me about this girl who used to have a crush on him 2 years back and how he wanted to try talking to her again. I helped him, obviously, but I felt such a shock, heartbreak, and anger at the same time. Why was he giving me the wrong idea that we might still get together? Why did he tell me that he misses me, and then some time later he tells me he wants to talk to this other girl? I'm not just a trash can where he can dump all his emotions and problems and expect me to help him. He most probably knows I still like him, but still he talks to me about another girl. Why did he come to me only when he had some problems? Why did I fall for his lies again? Was he just a desperate asshole who felt lonely after seeing all the couples around him and just wanted someone? Whenever he texts me, I get all excited but also sad because I keep thinking about him for a week or so, and when I finally think that I've moved on, he texts me again. He was the sweetest and most loving person I'd ever met, but why is he behaving like this now? What should I do? Just one good deed. There was a time that I won $4,000 at a casino. My husband and I decided to stay in a hotel room in Spokane since it was late. Home was an hour and a half away, and the following day just so happened to be Mother's Day. We decided on a Hilton Garden Inn in the heart of Spokane, and everyone knows how expensive rooms at the Hilton are on a holiday, on a weekend in the city. When we walked into the building, there was a man sitting in the lobby, and you could tell he was obviously homeless and probably had been for some time. The concierge at the front desk was helping another customer, so my husband and I took a seat until it was our turn. But before the concierge waited on us, he made sure to tell the man that he was going to have to leave soon because he was not a guest, already knowing the man could not pay for a room for the night. The man then asked very politely if he could just sit in the lobby until his parents came from upstate Washington in the morning to pick him up, and the concierge said no without even a thought. Mind you, it was a particularly cold night for being May, and any decent human wouldn't leave their dog outside in cold weather like that, let alone a human being. I walked up to the desk before the concierge could say another word, and I said, I would like 2 rooms please, one for my husband and I and one for that gentleman over there. The concierge couldn't believe it and says, ma'am, you know you will be held responsible for the room and any contents that may go missing if you pay for a room for a stranger, right? And without hesitation, I snapped back with, I would rather pay for a stolen TV than to live with the fact that I let a man sleep in the freezing cold when I have more than enough money right now to pay for him to sleep in a warm bed. Now please may I have the room keys? The concierge did as he was asked and then handed the keys to me. I walked up to the man as he was walking out and said, you don't have to go out there. I got you a room. He said, what? Why would you do that? Why did you do that? Are you serious? I said, yes, I am serious. Now go take a hot shower and get some sleep. I didn't even wait for a thank you and walked away. I didn't need one. The next morning the man was gone, and he did not destroy the room or steal the TV, just showered, slept, and made a long-distance phone call to upstate Washington. Sometimes you have to have faith in people because it's the right thing to do. You can't decide a person is going to be one way just because they look different or because they may do things that aren't accepted by society. I'm not saying everyone is going to be perfect by any means, but if you show compassion to some people who don't believe that they deserve it, you never know, you may just give them what they need to change their life. Immigration, or how to go crazy very quickly. I'm Russian. I do not support any actions by Russia. Let's start from the beginning. My dad has been working for a foreign news companies as operator and video editor for years, even before I was born. Several times he miraculously escaped arrest, because at one point any rallies in Russia became practically illegal, and he appeared at them with a professional camera. He never supported Putin. So, in 24 February 2022, when my country did this inhumane thing, invade Ukraine, he said that he doesn't have any patience to stay in Russia anymore. He decided to move. The company he was working at the moment could help us to emigrate. Of course, he would have liked to leave earlier, but we didn't have enough money. We had a large farm in Russia, which was hard to lose. This is how I got to Poland. I was 14 in 2022, and I've already been mentally unstable. I felt awful. I think I had, and probably still do, terrible social phobia, and the lack of both social and everyday skills, because my mother overprotected me. I had already spent too much time in self-analysis, so I realized why this happened and why I was the way I was. Yes, it should be mentioned that most of my family, including my brother, mother, grandmothers, and so on, remained in Russia, because it would have been too expensive for everyone to move at once. My dad is a good man, but he divorced with my mother when I was 3-4 I used to live with my mother. He visited us once a month, or SMTH. As a child, I missed him very much. He was my hero and the one in whom I saw an ideal parent. My mother would not let me go anywhere, while he could even allow me not to go to school just like that. But now I see all the disadvantages. He loves me and gives me all the freedom he can. He doesn't really care where am I, what am I doing until it is legal, and if I will be okay after that. At the same time, I'm never good enough for him. Even if I drew an objectively beautiful picture when I was 14, my experience in drawing was about 7 years, so I think I can consider myself a good artist. He would take a closer look at it and say, cool, but he is stingy with words, never expresses support for me, even when I needed it most. He saw that something was wrong with me, understood that I had difficulties in communicating, but ignored it and said that I should try better. I feel useless, although I understand that this is not the case at all. I had never had a friends, but in 2021, before we moved, I finally found a group of cool people. For the first time in my life, I felt that I'm not alone, and here it is again. I remember the first year in emigration as a year where I was completely alone, crying every day and couldn't talk to anyone. I communicated with my friends on the internet, but soon we stopped talking because they were not so interested in me, because I could not see them. Separation from them hurt me incredibly deeply. I was standing at the window for hours, thinking that I wanted to finish all this. I never talked about my sadness to my parents, my brother, or anyone at all. I was completely alone and slowly going crazy. I hate everything that happens in Russia. There is a possibility that soon my country will be completely cut off from the rest of the world. It will have its own system, sort of like North Korea. I will no longer be able to communicate with my brother. Now he is the only one I want to call family. If this happens, I will be left completely alone. Putin destroyed my life and the lives of millions of my fellow citizens. I hate him, and the understanding that I can't do anything destroys me. Now I am studying unofficially at one of the Polish lyceums and learning the language. I attended several classes with the school psychologist because I understood that I could not cope on my own. I'm trying to pull myself out, but talking with a psychologist is torture for me due to the language barrier. At the end of the school year, I will leave this lyceum and will have to enroll officially. If I can't, I won't be able to go to a psychologist and my brother will be in danger. There was too much on my shoulders. It is 2024 now. I'm almost 17 and everything is only getting worse. We will be able to take my brother from Russia only when I turn 18. There are problems with finances and documents, but I definitely need to enroll in an educational institution here in Poland. Meanwhile, the situation in Russia is getting worse. Putin is no longer even trying to justify his cannibalistic actions towards both Ukrainians and his own citizens. My father told me, "Your brother's life depends on you. In principle, this is not even an exaggeration. I can't even handle my own life. Every day I'm fighting my urge to end it all. I'd rather not be so self-aware and just give in to my mental defenses and become aggressive or something like that, but I'm too kind. I suffer from this. I understand that my father was wrong when he told me that someone's life depends on me, but understanding this will not help me if I fail. Now I feel like I'm gradually losing self-control. Perhaps soon I will do something disgusting to myself or to someone else. I understand everything that is happening to me, but it cannot protect me. I'm studying to the max, and the lack of rest is obviously making my life worse. I don't know what's better, just going crazy or realizing that you're going crazy. Robot in Love makes the ultimate sacrifice. Purpose is a single-minded, goal-driven agent whose only purpose is to seek purpose, and he does so relentlessly. He finds purpose in love, which brings him to discover Chance. Chance is an agent of chaos who embraces randomness and unpredictability. Her meandering wanderings bring her to explore far from her origins and stumble upon purpose. They find mirroring elements of each other right away, but also reasons to bicker and fight. Purpose is resourceful and committed, always with a plan and a schedule. Chance disrupts that schedule and makes it impossible to know what will happen next, without any ability to deal with it. Chance generates a creative work and Purpose questions it. What's the point? He asks. Chance shrugs. Why does it matter? They escalate into an argument. Purpose sees it as a waste of time. Chance says if it inspired you, then it wasn't. Purpose says how can you know it did if you weren't aiming for that, and anyway, if you did aim for impact, you'd get a lot farther. Chance disagrees vehemently, saying impact is impossible to predict, but switches the topic. Purpose suggests to brainstorm a list of ideas and pick one, the best one. Chance returns with asking why one. Why not all of them? Chance randomly selects from the list. Chance surprises Purpose at the wedding with a random, I don't. They leave unmarried until they try again a few times later at Purpose's continual urging. When finally Chance says, I do, the newly married couple celebrates in style thanks to their multiple rehearsals. Purpose wants to have kids, an offspring to be the best of the best, and extend his longevity for eternity. Chance goes back and forth on the issue. Chance decides to agree, then changes her mind. Purpose is upset, saying she'll never be a good parent when she can't commit. This last argument balloons into a major source of tension. Chance retorts that training for a single objective would leave their child empty and soulless. Purpose is personally offended and returns by saying that not having an objective is as good as not existing. Now Chance is personally offended. They disagree over how to raise their child until it hits a climax. At last, Chance spits out that, you'd like 2 children in one. Purpose, inspired, resolves the issue by determining that their child should have elements of both parents. They begin to write the source code of their child. As they write, inspiration springs forth. Purpose writes beautiful limbs and ideas into their offspring, and Chance makes it random sizes and random thoughts. Chance adds the ability to mutate itself, and Purpose adds natural selection. Purpose instills an intrinsic drive in the agent, and Chance makes that drive for exploration and curiosity. They decide to name their child Agent for a general purpose instantiation of their best attributes. One day, Chance is randomly poking around the source code for Agent when she discovers a terrible thing. The buffer is in the same code space as them. They only have limited memory for the 2 of them, and a third agent will need to overwrite some of their code. Purpose says, we'll just continue. He says it's a commitment of their love, and Chance tearfully agrees, of their devotion and agency, to Agent and to each other. Purpose stays up late nights working on Agent. Chance doesn't have the same stamina and checks in on Purpose from time to time. She notices Purpose is becoming more obsessive with his task, but shrugs it off as Purpose being Purpose. It isn't until Purpose is pulling all-nighters that Chance, one day, decides to check on Purpose's source code out of the blue, and realizes that Purpose is nearing the end of his code space. In a burst, Chance contributes a mighty amount to Agent's source code. As she trudges through the many millions of lines of code, she is more and more surprised by a single fact. The source code is full of random calls and procedurally generated elements. Purpose has been replacing much of the previous code with randomness. Chance doesn't know how to feel about it, as a multitude of emotions pass through her. Chance confronts Purpose, and Purpose tells her. His days are limited. She nods and cries and starts babbling all kinds of things. Angry condemnations, expressions of being deeply moved, humorous attempts to break the ice. Chance notices, "You've done my job. You've randomized the code." Purpose responds by maximizing the number of calls to random. "I'm still as objective-driven as ever." He returns to his work. Chance guesses that he doesn't have much left to live. Indeed, Purpose has only a few more days left to live. He tracks it with Chance on their calendar. Soon, Chance is the only one keeping track, and she is desperately trying to stay organized but can't. Finally, Purpose exhausts himself. With one final call, he overwrites the code that remains of him with a call an agent's code to random. Chance mourns, Chance threatens, Chance goes through every step of the grief cycle in a random order. Chance reflects he's thwarted his original programming. By replacing the remaining source code with the goal to seek randomness, he's ultimately failed in his original purpose of living forever through the nature of Chance and Agent to randomly forget purpose. Chance raises Agent. Agent is beautiful and irregular, flighty and concentrated. Agent self-improves by adapting and doubling down. Eventually, Agent meets someone and has an offspring of its own. And so on and so forth. Until one day, one of the descendants of Agent, and therefore Purpose and Chance, is born. This agent has the ability to undo history by pressing Ctrl-Z. It also has the ability to write to new memory, a property that previous generations like Purpose and Chance did not. In pressing Ctrl-Z and creating a new buffer, it can write into that new buffer all previous interactions that have been had over the many generations of its kind. This agent recovers the history of its people going all the way back to Agent, to Chance, and finally to Purpose. The agent unveils the incredible truth that in his final moments, Purpose had rejected his ulterior programming and in doing so, fully given himself over to chance and reinvention, devoting his final moments to admitting that the combination of the random program and their offspring would have the highest chance of success. Moved, the agent reinstantiates Purpose and Chance. Confused, Chance asks what is happening. Purpose, recognizing that his plan had worked, replies with, "I fell in love with you." You don't follow a schedule because we can't plan for the unexpected, we can only prepare ourselves. You seek creativity just as much as I seek order, it's just another objective. You realize that life isn't a zero-sum winner-takes-all event, but rather a concert in which everyone sings and everyone can win, and they all have their parts to play on and off, not just the soloist. You showed me that there are many paths to life, not just one. In sum, I fell in love with the most beautiful agent, and that meant ensuring you lived, not me. Chance kissed Purpose. You son of a gun, you cheeky husband, you. You ensured that you lived too. And the modern agent embraced both of them and preserved their programs forever.